So we want to have a discussion today really about what could, or what we think should be possible on the internet if we just kind of took a little bit more time to think about some of the basic ways that we exist and message online. Our goal for this session is really just kind of propose an idea and kind of take you through how we think about messaging, about email, and then also just have a discussion. So we look forward to your questions at the end. Email is about to turn 50 years old. It's older than I am, and it's definitely a product of another era. It has over 4 billion users. Almost everyone here, I'm sure, has an email address, and it's the most widely formed use of digital communication. All this you guys know. It's so obsolete in so many ways, and we all still use it, which Dan and I just find a little mind-boggling. It's a little crazy that there's no true successor for messaging in heterogeneous environments, so messaging across organizations across the globe. So, there's been a lot of advancements in other kinds of messaging. We all use instant messengers for synchronous communication, and I think, anyone who's kind of in, the digital workforce is using Slack or Teams. That all works fine within teams and organizations. But when you think about messaging across organizations, it's still a really poor experience. It doesn't have to be like this.
So just to introduce ourselves so that we have some background and we know what we're talking about, we are builders, and I'm also the CEO of a Swiss email hosting company called Migadu, which is kind of like a small indie company, but we host about 1 million email addresses globally. So not so small, but we like to appear that way because we don't like to grow exponentially. We like to actually work hand in hand with people, so we learn from them. And we've been doing that for the past 10 years. And the reason why I initially jumped into this was because I wanted to learn everything about email. And it's very easy to judge something from as a bystander. But if you are the guy in the background actually dealing with all the nonsense that email represents, it's crazy. It's a crazy world out there. And I can say, I don't know how many of you know how email works, but if you had the image what happens in the background, none of you would actually be using email. It's just crazy world. It's Wild West. And we are, during the past 10 years, we've been observing all of this, and we just said something has to be done over this. And this is where William and I are coming together to actually bring a proposal and a little bit spark an imagination for everyone what could be possible if we change email.
So rather than kind of just jumping straight into it, I really want to talk about the post office first. Everyone is familiar with how the post office works. It probably feels like second nature. And for most of us, it works well enough. But imagine you kind of wake up tomorrow and you need to send a package to someone across the country, but today the experience looks a little bit different. So today you may go to the post office in this new world. You go to USPS, you go to UPS, you go to FedEx. Everyone agrees to ship your package, but FedEx perhaps doesn't guarantee that it will arrive. Their deliverability is just way too low. So another example, in an effort to kind of protect the person that's receiving your message from receiving anything dangerous, the post office also decides to discard your message based on who's sending it. So, in this world, everyone from Hope, no one is able to send their messages, right? So, this is all kind of based on, a group getting blacklisted, based on where you're from, based on any kind of markers that post office decides on. And then to improve security of the messaging system, the post office also introduces some special programs where the postman decides to actually open your message and read every single letter that you're sending. So, they'll end up deciding based on the content of the message, if your receiver should receive it at the end of the day. But once you send it, it's out of your hands. And maybe lastly, just to ensure that the post office can keep up with all these new awful innovations, they've also decided to track every sender and every message without your consent. So, you would never accept anything like this at the post office today. But we're accepting it in email every single time we send an email. And, you think about the internet, and, it's the place that's supposed to be more efficient, not less efficient. So when email, first kind of originated, many, many decades ago, it was designed to mimic the post office. You have a sender, you have a post office that the sender goes to, you have a delivery service, you have a post office that the receiver goes to, and then you have your receiver. So it's a one-way send, and then once you send that parcel off, that message off, you as the sender don't have any control of what happens to it. It's gone. So you think about the digital realm on the internet, the distance between these two people who are receiving messages is effectively zero. So we've built a system that mimics this span in time and space, but that's not the way it works on the internet today. So there is no kind of modern way to send these messages. We're all kind of still constrained by these physical constraints. So, email is awful. I think we all have this experience. It's a dumping ground. So everyone's inboxes are a mess. The messages that you guys get in your inbox have things that you want, things that you expect to get, but then you're also going to get spam, scams, phishing. It's all mixed in one place. Still, most people, some people in this room even, you may check your emails 100 times a day. It's just such a waste of energy to kind of sift through what has substance and what does not have substance. But we still can't seem to quit it. It's part of our social fabric and our culture. And so, when we have something that's so ingrained in how we go about our daily lives, how we think, how we talk, how we communicate, it starts to affect how we act. And then we just start to accept that status quo, and we don't really think anything of it. So what if we were just to start over today, 50 years later, and just reimagine what this could look like, not based on a physical system, but on a digital system, the one that we kind of live in? And again, just to kind of, we're still really just talking about these heterogeneous environments. We're not trying to, solve all types of messaging, across the globe. This idea isn't meant to be an email killer. Email still will serve a purpose. It's super convenient. But there could be a better way to send and receive certain kinds of messages. So when Dejan and I think about modernizing email, it really has to kind of solve three big things. The first, email is a chaotic environment. I think we've talked about this inbox, right? Anyone can reach it, right? This is the definition of spam. So you have no say over what gets in and what gets out, and that results in super, super low signal. So there is a chaotic problem that must be solved. Number two, there's just a fundamental lack of security. Every time you send a message, it gets sent by being copied multiple times, 4 or 5 times before it reaches the sender. So there's no real true end-to-end encryption. You can't kind of mimic the same thing that happens in some of these instant messaging platforms. It just doesn't really exist. And then the last thing is, your personal data is just, it's going to fundamentally be exposed. These third parties, you're basically going to an intermediary, a Google, Microsoft, or an Apple, most of us, not everybody, and they own all of your data. They may encrypt it on their server, but it still needs to be copied whenever it gets relayed to the next place. So, they decide what gets through. They run the blacklist, the whitelist, and they're the ones who kind of decide who has access to what gets spoken on the internet. So, for example, what could messaging look like? I think Dejan and I believe that this should really be a user-owned system. You shouldn't have to go to ask for permission to speak on the internet. It should be surveillance-free, where authors and readers are the only ones who are involved in this conversation. On security, it's the same thing. You should be the only one who you're speaking, who you're talking to. And that message that you receive, you should believe that it's from a trusted party. And anyone in your address book, you should know that you're receiving a message that you can trust. Spam shouldn't really be a thing. It should be a thing of the past, right? I mean, every spam message is like someone shouting at us. So they can push in whatever they want always to our inbox. So, if you start to think of all these things, we're kind of held back by some of these protocols, again, 50 years old, that just impose some artificial limitations on how we can think about new opportunities in communicating. To kind of continue on this thread, right? It's like there should be public access for all people, not just who stays off the blacklist. The architecture should be simple enough and lightweight enough that it shouldn't take an arm and a leg if you're an enterprise or a business to set up and host and maintain your own email service. And here, I think Dan will talk a little bit more about this. You should be able to go pick up your messages, the ones that you want, not the ones that anyone says you have to have. So there's an element of a push and a pull that doesn't really exist today. When we think about messaging, it's more than just messaging. Messaging is really just the transfer of information, across the internet. But when we're working with people, right, there's people involved. So we also have to think about the identities of the people those messages are being transferred between. And then the third piece is, connecting those people in a secure, safe, trustful way also has to consider authentication. So when we really think about rethinking what email could look like, what messaging could look like across heterogeneous environments, it's not just messaging, it's identity, and it is authentication. These are not, they're not three solutions, this is one solution.
So I guess everyone's wondering, okay, so what is it actually that you're presenting here? As William said, we were looking for some way to make things simpler, not more complicated. And again, I'm not sure how many of you know the RFCs of email, but they just keep piling up. And the people that actually write them, they are mostly people from big tech. And they're not doing this because they want to help us and make us more secure. They're actually, email is their cash cow, and they are doing this to raise the barriers. We as providers at Migadu, we know this. They're continuously raising the barriers to entry, so you as a small provider cannot compete with them. And this keeps happening like continuously without any actual security benefit for the end user. Of course, they're gonna say, oh, because it's of this, it's gonna be more secure. It's nonsense. So we thought we need to start from scratch. We cannot propose a new RFC that's going to solve the underlying concept of email under which it's built. So take, for example, spam, and take, on the other hand, the privacy. We all want to end spam, but we also want privacy. But those two things are contradictory, because in the current system, if you want more privacy, you should not have spam filtering. So the machines should not be reading your messages. And on the other hand, if you want, if you just want to innovate on top of it, you're going to find this roadblock because the underlying concept is so wrong. And that's actually quite okay if you think about it. Email was not designed. It happened ad hoc, and it's it's really the killer app of the internet. But no one actually thought about the insecure way we're living in today. It was made for the academics. It was made for a closed environment. It was made in a place where everyone knew each other. So, but that world is not the world of today. We use email in really heterogeneous environments, and we use it for everything. And again, just think about it. What is email? It's your digital identity. It's basically a place where you drop all your stuff. It's your login for authentication for every kind of service that you're going to use on the internet. You just can't have the business web, the commercial web of today without email. It doesn't exist. I mean, how are you going to get notified when, where are you going to get your airplane tickets? I mean, how is that going to work? Which system are they going to send it on Signal or WhatsApp? It's just that world doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. We need something that binds all of these systems together. So that leads us to the protocol that underpins the email just simply has to change. We have to start from scratch. That doesn't mean that we have to end email as is, but just we need also a side channel, which is for trusted communication. Email should always remain, as the postal service should remain, but it needs to be repurposed, just as we repurposed SMS when instant messaging became, generally available. So that leads us to our proposal. We wrote this protocol called Mail over HTTPS. The idea is that it's a pull protocol, so you don't push a message to the recipient. And we're not the first one to propose this. Bernstein proposed this in his Internet Mail 2000, but it was never implemented, and it was marginally it was just a concept. So we're going ahead and we're like working on top of those ideas and a lot of changes that have been happening in the meantime. And we didn't want to build around SMTP either, because that's just nonsense. I mean, SMTP and IMAP and POP3 come from an era when we had big mainframes and we had dumb terminals. So we needed those stateful protocols to communicate with the mainframe. But today, our devices, that we use in our pockets are more powerful than the servers that we are actually serving users to get, that we're using for serving. So we've got a mainframe in our pocket. What's the purpose of using still the same protocols? And we're thinking a lot about this, and we said, okay, this has to be a very simple and lightweight protocol. It cannot be something complicated. It should be, everyone should feel empowered that in a single weekend can build a new email client or email server. Just try doing that with SMTP or IMAP. I can just tell you that the SMTP, the most popular SMTP server, which is Postfix, has about 2 million lines of code. Dovecode has about, which is the IMAP server, has about 4 million lines of code. And they are just, they keep growing. As the RFCs just keep, we're inventing new RFCs and so on. It has to be much, much more lightweight. And finally, it has to be end-to-end encrypted. Before I just continue, I want you to get one idea out of your head, which might seem so obvious, but we have this concept of pushing a message, which William was saying before, in the postal system, but that's a thing of the past. That's based on physical limitations. On the internet, the distance between us is always constant, it's always zero. So you can reach someone in Japan or with the same effort as it takes to reach someone, just in the neighborhood. This means that we also need a different way of thinking. What does it mean today to send a message? Like using the word send, I send a message to someone. That means I do something onto the recipient. That's not right, that's not democratic. And that's what, that concept brings us to spam. We should be thinking completely different, digital native, as a digital native system. I have a message and I share it with someone. It's their choice if they want to read it or not. That's what we do actually all the time. It's just so natural, yet messaging is stuck in a completely different era. We still think of sending a message as shipping physical bytes. That's just ridiculous today. And we definitely don't have anything against the addressing space of email. That's wonderful. We love this sign. And it's so intuitive, and everyone knows, even my grandma knows what this means. I don't think we need new addressing space unless you've read the RFC of email addresses. That definitely has to change, because that RFC is full of nonsense, of obsolete stuff, and it could be reduced to probably 1/10 of its size based on actual usage today. But we still think that we should keep the address space, and we should be able to have a new system that runs in parallel to the old system. So we don't have to give up of old email in order to use something new. And we want everyone to know that this is, however, even though we're using the same addressing space, this is not the SMTP-based email. This is a completely new way of messaging. And again, just think about it. When I just said before, we're talking here about pulling a message. What does that actually look like in the physical world? You just go directly to the sender, to the author of the message, and say, hey, I've heard you had a message for me, and you just go and get it directly from them. That's self-authenticating, and we have been dealing with authentication on the internet for the past 30 years, and we still are unable to solve it unless you have someone technical that will actually read the headers of an email and say, and determine if it's for real or not. Even Google has fallen for phishing and for authenticity hacks. So, but how obvious it is that if you receive in the physical mail, just consider like another example from the real world. If you receive a fine in your postal mail, and I'm not sure how often it happens in the United States, but in Switzerland it happens quite often, where you would get a fake invoice or a fake fine, and you would just pay for it without actually determining the authenticity of the letter. So what's the first thing that an intelligent person will do? He will go directly to the police station, and he will say, I have this fine, I don't understand, what is it for? Why should I pay this? And you will determine the authenticity of it. So you go directly to the source, and that's self-authentication. It's so obvious. Now, just think about it, what actually, let's just go back and think about in a very, very simple way how currently email works. You have the sender, you hand off your message to your email provider. Your email provider tries to deliver it to the receiving email provider, which then delivers the message to the local mailbox or to the local storage server of the receiver, who will eventually pull it from there. So as soon as I push my message out, I've lost control of it. It's gone. It's just like fire and forget. Does that sound digital native to you today? And the receiver has no choice at all what comes on the top of his inbox. That's bullying. It's just we don't think of it that way because email became so much part of our culture that we don't even think about this. We just want to get our day done, get our work done. Let's go and get on with it. But since privacy is is a topic which is, I think, very dear to all of us here, just think about what happens here. Your provider has access to the full message, and the receiving provider has access to the full message. Usually, there's at least 4 more nodes involved here, or more if you are, of course, doing spam filtering, if you're doing backups, if you are, fault tolerant. It's just you will have your message will live on many places for a very long time. And of course, now everyone's going to say, hey, Proton Mail solved this. Of course, Proton Mail solved this. Or why don't we just stop using this? Proton Mail solved it for us. No, they didn't. PGP doesn't solve this, or GPG doesn't solve this issue, because the metadata still travels. Metadata is essential in email, so it travels with your message all the time. And anyone can actually see it. Of course, they're going to say, oh, well, but we encrypted REST. Sure, you encrypt the REST, but you also keep the keys. So as it happened with Proton Mail, the Swiss government, they are, Switzerland pretends to be the most privacy-respecting country in the world, but that's just BS. If the police comes and asks a provider about handing over the data of a user, you're actually forbidden to talk about it. So, of course, you never hear Swiss companies talk about how much data they've given out. So, and if they want, even before, if this were, just to come to the point, if the Proton Mail was this, before the message, the transit of the message between the providers, yes, it goes over TLS and the encrypted channels. But once the message gets into the server, it's always unencrypted. And just people don't realize these things. And there's a lot of smoke and mirrors privacy talk among email providers. Now, let's consider how pool would actually look like and what mail HTTPS actually does. Obviously, you have Alice and Bob. And first and most important thing on which mail HTTPS is based on is profiles. you know, email today doesn't have any profiles. You just have, and when I say profiles, I don't want you to think about profiling. I want you to think about keys distribution. I mean, that's such an essential problem. In order to encrypt in a heterogeneous environment and globally, we first have to solve the bigger problem, which is how do we distribute keys in the public keys in a simple and universal way globally. And that's a problem that still hasn't been solved. And we think that we should actually, with mail HTTPS, what we're proposing is based on your email address that you can determine where your profile is, which contains the keys. Of course, in that profile, you can add also other stuff, but that's not the point here. So the first part would be, let's first fetch that profile. And that profile should be hosted by your mail server or mail servers. I just don't want to call it mail servers, so we have another term, we just call it mail agents, home mail agent. And so Alice will go and fetch the profile of Bob, and we'll of course parse it and read the keys. Then Alice, who has a message for Bob, will simply encrypt the message with the keys, and of course I'm simplifying here a lot, but it will encrypt the message and upload it to own home mail agent. Then it will notify Bob, hey, there's a new message for you. This is to be considered insecure, this one, but it preserves the privacy of both parts, which we can come to later. And then Bob will fetch that notification and verify if it's authentic. Once it has received the notifications, it will, and it determined that it's authentic, it will proceed and actually contact directly Alice's mail agent and retrieve the message directly onto the device. Notice that it doesn't pass through Bob's mail agent. It doesn't go through Bob's infrastructure. You're actually pulling the message directly onto your device. Local first messaging. And how does that actually work in practice? So I said mail over HTTPS, and I said before that we should think about messaging as sharing. Well, what's the best protocol we have online that exists already for sharing resources? It's HTTPS. It's HTTP, but of course HTTPS today. So if I want to share a message with you, there's no better protocol than that. I'm just going to allow you that you download. And this is so trivial, but it's so empowering. I can actually send you a gigabyte of a message if I want to. I'm not limited by the receiver. I can be only limited by my own provider, but I can change my own provider. So you don't have to, you don't have to chunk that PDF in several messages and send it when you're sending it to someone anymore, or those photos. You can just send it all together. Now, how does that actually work in the end? What the benefits are of it? So chaos that William was talking about, it becomes order. How? Access to your inbox is based on your approval. It's not open to the world that anyone can just come in and drop things into your inbox. Then insecurity. We have end-to-end encryption, which is easy. We have easy keys distribution, and messages travel encrypted without intermediaries. And exposure becomes privacy. No one can push you a message pretending to be someone else. Now, I want to go back to this and say, since we are using here, this part might actually be, some people might jump and say, oh, but this is actually still sending, like in SMTP. This is just considered like a web ping. I'm just making a call and saying like, hey, there could be a message for you. But then someone could say, but wait, but then you're going to say who it is from and so on. You're exposing still metadata. We have this kind of cool concept, which we came up with. We create, when we are connecting Alice and Bob are kind of pairing. They're pair as you would pair two Bluetooth devices. So and they create a link, and that link is based on their email addresses, a hash of their email addresses, so it's common to both of them. And they don't ever expose to mail agents the other side. They just use the link. And the mail providers have no clue to whom you're talking to. They just know their own user is connecting and disconnecting. Who they're talking to and what they're doing, they have no clue of it. All the metadata remains end-to-end encrypted. But why does it all matter? Of course, who's going to give up their beloved email? As I said before, email underpins the internet of today. Just imagine the user experience we could build if we changed the way how we communicate. We could just imagine the interactivity between us, which is driven by these old protocols. Hey, I'm just going to send you an email. Hey, oh no, I forgot. I've sent the email and what can I do? It was wrong. There's no undo in email, even though Gmail tries to fake it and a lot of platforms try to delay the delivering of the messages. But shouldn't that be like built in, revoking of the message, or updating the message, or knowing when the message was pulled so that you know that actually someone received it without invading their privacy? And then again, HTML has no place in email, just to go and say that. But we could invent a completely new structure, fiber of the internet, the social fiber, if we change email. Email is the mother of all social networks. Just many people don't realize that. And just, I'll give a final example about newsletters. We all receive those newsletters, in the bucket, which William was saying before, where everything comes in the bucket, new notifications, spam, phishing, and all of it, and newsletters, and especially a lot of newsletters. So as someone who has been an email engineer for about 15 years so far, I can tell you, like, sending newsletters is like the dark secret of the internet. It's so bad. It's like you get no choice. Just think about it. If you want to unsubscribe from a newsletter, you actually have to go to the sender and ask him, hey, please stop sending me. It's the unsubscribe button. Hey, unsubscribing should be a local decision that I control my email. I should decide what I receive and not. And talking about newsletters, we also have one concept here, which we intentionally don't want to talk about the applications. We just want to talk about the concept. But if you want to send a newsletter in this system as a marketing company, just imagine how smart that is. Instead of having one email, which you're going to fire to millions of people, you just upload one message to your home agent, and then you notify all those people that want to hear from you. Or you don't even have to notify them, actually. But they can just come and pick up the message directly, but their agent, their client, will be picking up the messages just whenever they are available. That's the true permission-based marketing. So we think that by changing email, we can change actually the internet. We can change social networking. And if you're interested, you can actually visit. We are still not for our prime time, but this is an open protocol. This is, everything is on GitHub, and we have clients for all platforms almost, including Linux, obviously, and BSDs. But we're still working on it. We're still in early phases, but we would love input from your side. If someone is interested, to tell us how we can make things better, and eventually make an RFC out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, friends. As a reminder to our friends in Matrix, please @tagmanchicken so that I can see your question. I have two mics set up here, or we have two mics set up here. Please come in an orderly manner, and I will intersperse questions from Matrix and questions from humans in the audience.
Hello. So I guess one of the things that unfortunately I use email for is IMAP sucks, but it's where I keep my stuff, and I can get to it from my desktop and get to it from my phone. If I go to somebody else's mail agent and I bring that email to my phone, is that it? Is it kind of, are we back to POP, where once it's downloaded, it's gone?
Great question, thank you. So that was actually why IMAP was invented for, to sync between devices. And we're solving that problem in a little bit different way. The mail agent, I'm just gonna go back, the mail agent to which you uploaded the message will keep the encrypted message for 7 days. And during those 7 days, your devices can actually, they will retrieve again the notification and sync to it. So you're actually syncing all the time to, all your devices will sync identically during those 7 days. So it's a little bit different concept, but instead of syncing to your local server, you're actually syncing to the senders, to the outers agents.
All right, we have one question from Matrix. There are about 100 million email servers and billions of email accounts. How would billions of personal open email servers, sorry, it jumped on me. How would billions of personal open email servers would determine trust each and let users determine what is spam or fraud?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, excuse me. All right, so I'm going to read it word for word again, very slowly, because I'm having a hard time reading myself. There is about 100 million email servers and billions of email accounts. How would billions of personal open email servers would determine trust each and let users determine what is spam or fraud?
They don't determine what is spam or fraud. This system is a bit different than that. We are actually, by creating those links, which are your contacts, you're actually creating your network of trust. Everyone creates and vets their network of trust. So, and we don't want to compete with email. We don't want to kill email. We don't want to say that those should migrate to this. We just want to repurpose email. We want to give new tools so that my lawyer or my notary doesn't have to send me my house purchase contract over Gmail and share it with half of the world and feed LLMs with it. So I want my doctor to be able to send me in an open way my information about my health without exposing it to other parties. So it's a bit, and regarding the servers, the server, as I said before, Postfix and Dovecot are together about 6 million lines of code. Well, the open email is just a dumb web server. So in the end, it's about 1,000 lines of code. And anyone can just write it over a weekend and hack it over. It's just simple.
Thank you for the talk. So it seems to me that a lot of people don't like email in part for all the reasons you've been discussing, but also for other reasons that have to do with maybe like form factor or like coolness or something like that. I was reading a newsletter earlier today, and I can't validate this, but one of the claims in it, it was a little thing about OpenAI and how apparently internally at the company, they don't use email at all. It's like all Slack. And I've noticed personally that Slack has also, and I think there are maybe other messengers that are doing this, incorporated certain email-like features, like a draft and send later sort of thing or whatever. And I guess I'm just a little confused as to what the like the particular gain or like offer here is, and why you couldn't imagine. Like in my head, it sort of seems, to put it another way, like there's sort of like a unified messenger, right? And you don't need a ton of different protocols, and whether you import email concepts into something like Slack or vice versa, the goal is just doing messaging. So like when you talk about like what is when you say you want to upgrade email, like I'm still confused on like what the virtue of email in particular is.
Yeah, I'll start that. Yeah, I mean, I think the Slack example, I mean, Dana and I have kind of talked about in the past too. I mean, the difference here is really the heterogeneous environments. Like that's kind of the starting point. So if you're using Slack, you could connect to another business on Slack, but it's still a really crappy experience. So, I mean, think about like you and I trying to message each other. Like we would have to know that both of us are on Slack, and then we would have to somehow make that connection. So that whole experience is just, it's pretty clunky. It's pretty crappy. So, I mean, email provides kind of that global universal system, and this is really the kind of messaging that we're trying to rethink. But yeah, I mean, this isn't meant to replace all kinds of messaging. I mean, there are, of course, use cases that are kind of specialized for certain kinds of cases. But yeah, I don't know if you're going to.
Yeah, I want to add there that we should first determine the nature of each message. Instant message and email, we still have them today. Slack was supposed to be the email killer. It didn't kill email. It just repurposed it inside organizations. But instant messages their timing they're instant. They're about the real time. They're about, very short-lived. Emails are living longer. Their duration is meant to be over maybe weeks, sometimes years, because we all keep our archives. And think of on the other side, there would be books. Books even go across millennia. So it's all about different natures of communication that we have. And we will never have one replace the other. Like instant messages are never going to replace books. And email is never going to replace instant messaging. And instant messaging will never replace email. They might just take some of that communication out, which could happen over the other medium. And I think that they will coexist. And also Slack is a very closed platform, so it doesn't work cross organizations. Our challenge here is how do we connect organizations and people across inter-organizational connections, not just inside. Thank you, though.
All right, we have another question from Matrix. Do you imagine that many providers would be using the open email protocol, and would you manage the protocol, or would you be providing messaging service?
We don't know yet. At the moment, we are just really concerned about building the protocol, building the clients, building the servers, then having the first beta testers, the people that can help us actually refine this experience. Because we're still, to be honest, we're still also exploring what this could be. Because we are so ingrained in this email thinking, it's so difficult to shift away from it. Email essentially is a culture. We are fighting culture here. And what we will do, we don't want to have this as our, like closed protocol. We want to give this to the world. We want everyone to contribute to it, to make it simpler, not more complicated.
So in that case you mentioned earlier about like having multiple devices, a phone and a desktop pulling at the same pulling separately. You also mentioned that there are chances now that like ours can update the email. What are the chances that the phone pulls, the email is updated, and now the desktop pulls? Is there any significant alerting messaging? Is it versioned out there in order to know that it modified in that 7-day time frame?
Thank you. I knew someone's going to grab me for that. So in email, generally, we like email because it's like a paper trail. So we don't like messages to be updated, and I can completely understand that. But in some cases, especially within, in some business communication, it's kind of cool that you can fix your errors. And the way we are, this is something that should happen on the client. Protocol should be completely indifferent. Protocol should be simply ignoring, not knowing anything about what's happening inside of the message. The client determines how it's going to show this. Will it show it maybe as a diff, as on a Git, like showing it what was the change? Will it? We're still working on it. That's why we say we're so early. We're just still exploring what it could be. Just imagine like that. I forgot to send an attachment. Oh, so I send another email. No, I can just change the message and add an attachment to it. It appears there to everyone. So we're still working on it. Thank you. Good question there.
The fact that you can even ask that question, I think, is like the exciting opportunity that we really like. I mean, this kind of just creates new opportunities to message more in a more flexible way. So, whether it's, changing messaging or, creating some approval process, between two messengers, I think it's really just kind of a blank slate for how we could message.
All right, I have one question from online. What prevents us from doing this now? Couldn't Proton roll this out with Proton users instead of PGP? Thank you.
I wish they could, and I wish they would. Really, I wish they would, but I don't think they're. I don't think they will. Unfortunately, they're. I cannot speak for them. They're definitely in a position in which they could take a stand and do something for all of us instead of doing that smoke and mirror stuff of like pretending to have fixed email instead of just coming up with marginal improvements. I really wish the mail providers were more united in order to fix the problem at hand instead of actually focused on their margins. So.
Hello, this is thrilling. Give me a week to set up my relay, please. You had my mind racing. As soon as you begin to talk about gigabyte attachments, it makes you really think that, HTTPS is maybe on version 3, I think. We have like addressable ranges, we have streaming, we have all this is a base layer that is much more solid to build on, so it can go any kinds of directions. The change editing thing, I've been really enamored by auto merge. Mm-hmm. It's a CRDT implementation. It also has very nice encryption guarantees. But before I got up here, I was curious to hear, you think this may be applicable to doctors' offices, healthcare records. Who's next in line? Who's next in line? When does this become a Gmail experiment? How is there a zero-click upgrade path for my aunts and uncles, or is there, do my aunts and uncles need to learn 1,000 lines of JavaScript?
Thank you. William, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we think about kind of like the doctor office and like the lawyer and the lawyer's offices and perhaps banks, mostly just because of the fact that kind of that end-to-end encryption doesn't exist today. So if you're going to receive something like a medical record or a bank contract or a lawyer contract, we feel like that use case is pretty clear. And then I think we're also starting from very very small early days today. So how do we kind of get that early network to use this is kind of one of the big things that we're thinking about. But I think for the individual use cases, I mean, Dejan and I would love to use that just by ourselves. So it's more of just kind of it's more of an order of operations. I mean, we want to be able to kind of serve all these different parties, but it's like who are going to be kind of like those early groups of users, not just like the early single user. In just terms of growing this and get people to adopt it is kind of the idea. Yeah.
But we are not. We're mentioning like that sounds like we're talking the enterprise speak, but we are actually looking at really like us, the people. We should be the ones that actually have the benefit, because when we talk to the doctor's office, we should be protected. So we want all of us to be in it, not just them. And so we're just excited of how many things we can innovate if we just forget the old ways. So we don't know where this can lead still, and we're just exploring. And that's why we still need help on the protocol. We tried. It's just the first draft which we made. But it's been, of course, it was it was 2 years till we made that protocol through a lot of trial and error and finding the right way. But we made it so that it's future-proof. So it's not tied to any specific algorithm. So we're taking the best ideas of email, the good parts of email, and dropping the bad parts. So it's still basically a decentralized system.
All right.
Thank you.
If we could, I'm sorry, we're running short on time and we got a couple more questions. So if we could go into lightning round mode, that would be amazing. I'm going to let my friend go here, and then I got one more question on Matrix.
So thank you for presenting this. It sounds intriguing. I guess my biggest critique of it would be that you're taking like, you're replacing some of the bad parts about email with some of the bad parts about web servers. And one of the things I'm thinking about is the potential for censorship, and particularly at the rise of totalitarian regimes across the globe, including here in America. I guess my question is, like, how proof of the system is against potential censorship? Say I get an email, like a reporter gets sent an email to grab some sensitive information, but oopsie, all of a sudden the sender gets raided, they have their email server, and all of a sudden, yeah, we're gonna delete that or just shut down everything or maybe even just change it in some way.
But they can't. Yeah, the keys are just the public keys on the server. Of course, the only vulnerability that I see here is the key swap attack. So where they
man in the middle, both parties, yeah, right?
But that's one of the basic. We have some ideas on how to actually prevent this, but let's. I think the attack vector here, we have to we're not here talking about. State-sponsored or CIA or NSA looking at us. We're just trying to get a next step away from email, which is completely insecure. And then let's go to the next level here first. We're not going to be able to fix everything so quickly.
Of course not. But you're talking about the situations like, okay, well, it's good that we're able to change these messages.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the question is, how do you guard against the possible downsides of those messages being changeable in that way? Like, yeah, theoretically only the sender can do it, but like, what if just some regime just shuts everything down and oops, now you've lost half your email? Like, that's the question I'm kind of curious.
I just don't understand how you mean lost all your emails. The messages live for about 7 days on the server, but when you pull them, they're on your device. So it's actually everything's on your device. You can now, something that you could never do before with regular email, it's your device that can decide to sync to some other service where you want to have a backup service somewhere, let's say, wherever storage you want to use. Your device decides where you want to send them.
Okay.
If you consider Gmail, they're all there, tied, the relaying and the storage.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, friends. Let's give our friends another hand.
Thank you.